Nicaragua is celebrating the Day of Joy, marking 40 years since dictator Anastasio Somoza fled the country. A member of Brazil's landless workers movement was killed after a truck plowed into peaceful rural demonstrators. And vaccinations against Ebola are now being administered in Goma City in the Democratic Republic of Congo. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. Nicaraguans are gearing up to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Sandinista revolution this Friday, 2 days before the victory was complete on the 17th of July, 1979. Dictator Anastasio Somoza fled the country. So let's look back at that historic event, which became known as a Day of Joy.
Aldo Diaz-Lacayo is a diplomat, writer and historian. He remembers it as if it were yesterday, that day on July 17th, 1979, when he was in El Salvador with a group of exiled people. He remembers having called the then ambassador and demanding that he hand over the embassy, this being a legal request. Diaz-Lacayo believes this day should be called National Liberation Day.
El Día de Alegría es
The Day of Joyfulness is the continuation of a struggle that began on May 4, 1927, with the National Dignity Day, when Sandino rejected the Moncada Pact with the U.S. It's a day which was reached after 52 years, and now we are reaffirming our national liberation.
The deaths, the suffering of hundreds of thousands, the repression was left behind, but it left an indelible mark. Carlos Fonseca, son of the founder of the Sandinista Liberation Front, said that although he was only 12 years old, he remembers coming from Cuba had already begun. He feels privileged of being born in a country with the triumph of the only armed revolution after the Cuban Revolution.
With this, the military dictatorships which were imposed by the United States lost their validity. Imperialism was forced to surrender to the idea that these dictatorships no longer served them. The Sandinista revolution signified the end of an era of military dictatorships in Latin America.
At the 22nd August Plaza, with music, chanting and art exhibit, people celebrate the Day of National Joy. Indira Pinta demonstrates her work, which is inspired during the victorious month of July.
It's an abstract painting, and each person can interpret it as they want. When I painted it, I felt the joy of a young man fighting when I was 14-15 years old, seeing his family happy and shouting, "No one gives up," because no one wanted to give up at that moment. They wanted to win, in order to see a free Nicaragua. That's why my painting is called Rebellion.
On July 19th, 1979, the board of the Government of National Reconstruction, based in the city of León, entered Managua, the capital, and certified the triumph of the popular struggle.
Joining us now is Valdrak Jensky, Nicaragua's Minister Advisor for International Affairs and the Caribbean. Great to have you with us on this important week and this historic year.
It's great to be on Telesur. Evening.
Tell us a bit about the significance of this 40th anniversary, which is celebrated just 1 year after the destabilization attempts witnessed in 2018.
Yeah, the 40th anniversary of the revolution is a milestone. It's a milestone because we have been building for the last 40 years a very young democracy. Nicaragua is a very young democracy. We started building our democratic process just immediately after we overthrew the dictatorship in 1979. And I think the fundamental achievement, if you want to capture it, has to do with peace, with stability, with reconciliation, with national unity and well-being of the people. If you want to define the importance of this revolution, we have been at delivering, as we say, fundamental and relevant resources for the well-being of the people.
Absolutely, and it's quite impressive what has been accomplished by the people in government there. What have been some of the most important achievements? Tell us a bit more since the triumph of the revolution.
Well, I think we need to set this in a historic manner. In first place, we came to government. We overthrew the dictatorship in 1979, and immediately after overthrowing the dictatorship, we had to face one of the most terrible war that was waged on our people back in the 80s, as you know, what is called the Contra War. So many of the development and many of the restitution of rights that we were beginning to implement since the revolution were immediately boycotted. That process of democratic building, that process of delivery to people was immediately boycotted by that Contra War. But the Sandinista front kept struggling, kept onward. And when we came back into the government in 2007, we were able to build a very sustained development process that took us into many internationally recognized achievements. We are the country, we are the safest country in the region, for example. We were able to slash poverty in 2/3 over the last 10 years. We have grown at 5% average a year for the last 10 years. Those are very important because then we are capable, or we have been capable to deliver free and quality education, free and quality healthcare, free access to many of the fundamental infrastructure. Remember, Nicaragua is one of the, as we would say, one of the smallest economy in the region. Nicaragua is a country that, because of the intervention from the U.S., we have not developed as fast in the region. So therefore, the achievements that we were able to attain in the last 10 years are very important. As I said, infrastructure, health, education, rights, for example. Nicaragua is regarded as the 5th country in the world in gender parity, for example. The safest country in the region, as I said. Those two indicators are what we would call multifactorial, because they have to do with many other indicators. So you don't reach the gender parity in as its own. It has to do with access, it has to do with services, it has to do with democracy, it has to do with recognition of rights of different of women in this case, and also indigenous and Afro-descendant, which is also a very important achievement in our country.
Absolutely. And you mentioned U.S. intervention and the Contra War. Speak to us a little bit about what happened during that period.
Nicaragua has been historically intervened and meddled, our internal affairs has been, we have suffered meddling from the U.S. From very soon after independence in 1821, by 1854, Nicaragua was annexed to the southern Congress of the U.S., and slavery was imposed in the country. We defeated that intervention. We were also sanctioned and intervened at the beginning of the century, of the 20th century, by the famous, what we call the Knox Note, by which General Zelaya at the moment, who was carrying out a liberal revolution, was then forced out of power and overthrown by a coup. Then came Sandino, who had to rise against the military intervention, the marine intervention that was in Nicaragua for 2 or 3 decades. And Sandino rose against that intervention and expelled the U.S. Marines from Nicaragua in the 30s. And the U.S. then used the way of assassinating Sandino and dismantling Sandino's proposal to then impose a dictatorship that lasted 45 years. That is the dictatorship that we overthrew in 1979. So you can see a very strong continued of the popular movement from the defeat of William Walker and his intervention in 1854 to 1856, which we call the National War, to Sandino expelling the Marines in the 30s, and then the revolution in the 80s. But then the U.S. has never stopped meddling and intervening, and then you have the Contra War in the 80s. So that is how you can understand that a government that came to power in 2007 and was so successful in delivering, in creating wealth, in delivering, and as I said, in distributing, the wealth in the society, was then seen as a bad example, as seen as a threat, because if you are a country that maintains dignity, if you're a country that maintains your own position, if you're a country that don't allow to be meddle and to be then intervene, as I said, then you become a bad example. Because on one side, we had all of these successful achievements in the economic sphere, in the political sphere, in social sphere. And on the other side, we were a dignified, independent, sovereign, self-determined country. Those two things seems that they don't work together for the empire, and therefore they needed to dismantle that proposal. That is how you understand what happened in the country last year, by which they tried to impose, tried to carry out a coup d'etat against President Ortega.
Absolutely. Now, last year, I heard a bit of debate internationally with critics saying that the Sandinista government under President Daniel Ortega had dropped some of its socialist and revolutionary principles. Do you believe that the government, the Sandinista government, is still a socialist and revolutionary government?
The revolution, the Sandinista revolution, the inspiration of Sandino, the inspiration of our founder, Carlos Fonseca, our proposal is a revolutionary proposal. It's a proposal, there is nothing more revolutionary than free and quality health. There is nothing more revolutionary than free and quality education. There is nothing more revolutionary than roads, than access, than electricity. Those are the elements that are at the base of our revolutionary proposal. There is nothing more revolutionary than being independent, than being sovereign, than standing in front and standing up to intervention by the biggest powers, I would have to say, at this stage in the world. Revolution, there's distribution, social participation. Our motto is Christian, socialist, and in solidarity. Those are elements that configure our revolutionary proposal. We don't need to sit down and start, as I would say, defending what is our revolutionary proposal. We are implementing a very advanced social revolution in Nicaragua, and that is recognized by our people. As I said, there is nothing more revolutionary than people who have historically have not have access to electricity, to water, and to sanitation to have it. Now, the fact that some of the international organization recognizes that doesn't take down the importance of that revolutionary proposal. But I think at the basis of it also, peace, stability, reconciliation, and national unity are the fundamental proposal, are the fundamental revolutionary proposal in a country in which the elite has used polarization and has used division in the country of our national unity, have never allowed the country to really build a national unity. And it's only Sandinista revolution, it's only the Sandinista proposal that is capable of putting on the table a national unity proposal. So therefore, you have a reconciliation, national unity at the base of a revolutionary proposal, but also distribution, participation, access, and protagonism by the people. Those are the elements of our revolution. I think we are moving forward with these proposals. There is no, that's probably the reason why the empire states that our country and our revolution is one of the biggest threats. It's a threat because it's a good example. It's an example for the people in Latin America. It's an example for the poor people throughout the world that we are capable to build a revolution, that we're capable to deliver, that we're capable then to build a country that is based on defending its dignity, its sovereignty, and its independence.
Now let's look ahead. What does the Frente Sandinista hope to achieve between now and the end of Comandante Daniel's presidential term? And do you expect to see younger generations propel the revolution forward in these coming years?
The revolution is a process, it's a continuum. It's a continuum by which the popular movement that in our country, for example, that Sandino was the first time in history that the leader of the uprising, in this case, Sandino, came from the popular movement and defeated the empire. It's a continuum that takes us to the founding of the Sandinista Front. It's a continuum that takes us to the defeat of the dictatorship and the defeat of the intervention in the 1980s. It's a continuum that took us to struggle during the neoliberal counter-revolutionary process between the 90s and 2006. And it's a continuum that moved forward to continue building a country that's independent, a country that is capable within its sovereignty to build well-being, to build a communication, to build relationship with everyone in the world. And I think that is what you will see forward. We will continue to implement those fundamental elements of the revolution. President Ortega has said to us that the most important achievement, the most important objective of our revolution is the struggle against poverty. There is nothing more revolutionary than defeating poverty, than eliminating poverty, than allowing our people to rise forward, to rise in better condition. And that is the revolutionary proposal that is moved forward. As I say, it's a continuum, and we will continue that process throughout time.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today during this historic week there in Nicaragua. We've been speaking to Valdrak Yansky, Minister, Advisor for International Affairs and the Caribbean. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. Representatives of the Venezuelan government and opposition are continuing negotiations which began in May. Norway's Minister of Foreign Affairs confirmed that the parties will continue to receive the support and facilitation of the Norwegian government. The communique cautions the parties in making statements about the process and urges compliance with the established guidelines to ensure a constructive environment. The talks, which began in Oslo, have been held in Barbados since last week. And since then, Minister of Communication Jorge Rodriguez has confirmed the talks through Twitter as well. A member of the Brazil's landless workers movement, the MST, was killed and 10 others were injured when a pickup truck plowed into the group as they protested in the state of Sao Paulo. The MST says that families living at the Marielle Vive camp held a peaceful demonstration to press the local council for a regular water supply. They were also demanding agrarian reform, as the MST always does. However, community members went to deliver food. A man in a pickup truck crashed into the group, killing 72-year-old Luis Ferreira da Costa. Driver then pointed a firearm at the victims. The MST is now calling for action to be taken against the driver, who they say is encouraged by irresponsible authorities in the Brazilian government. Our correspondent Ignacio Limas has more.
Saludos, abrimos conexión desde el campamento del Movimiento Sin Tierra Marielle Vive.
I'm here at the Marielle Vive MST camp, which was set up in honor of Rio councilwoman Marielle Franco, who was murdered last year. There's an air of great concern in the camp, as there is still no official response from authorities following the morning's attack, which left 72-year-old Luis Ferreira da Costa dead as he was run over by a pickup truck. 10 others were injured as the truck plowed into a peaceful protest. The driver of the truck then pointed a firearm at the victims. Before the attack, members of the MST were holding a peaceful demonstration to demand access to clean water for their camp. which is surrounded by gated communities. The dispute for the use of the camp, where 1,000 families live, started 1 year ago. Nonetheless, many are shocked that today's murder happened just an hour and a half away from the richest city in South America. The landless workers' movement has sent out a statement blaming the government of Jair Bolsonaro for fanning the flames of hate and inciting violence against social movements and activists, reminding the government that the goal of the MST is to find land for people to live and thrive in. The latest rumors say the murderer has been identified, but police remain quiet about any developments.
Vaccinations against Ebola are now being administered in Goma City in the Democratic Republic of Congo after the first case was recorded on Monday. With fears of an imminent spread of the virus in the populous city, the World Health Organization has started reinforcing awareness and prevention of the disease. Goma had been preparing for Ebola outbreak for months by setting up hand-washing stations, vaccinating 3,000 healthcare workers, and running an international operation treatment center since February. Almost 1,700 people have lost their lives to the highly contagious disease during the 11th-month epidemic.
It's important that the community provides us with their total collaboration. It is also important for the community to follow procedures. Those lists of patients' contacts have to undergo a daily health check over a period of 21 days, and these people have to be vaccinated for their own protection. So, adhering to public health measures is the key in containing the Ebola epidemic here in Goma.
At least 33 people have died in Kyoto, Japan, after an arson attack at an animation studio. The blaze also injured 36 people. Authorities have apprehended a 41-year-old suspect who allegedly broke into the Kyoto animation studio on Thursday and sprayed gasoline before igniting it. Kyoto Animation produces films and graphic novels and is well regarded by fans. An Italian court has overturned all charges against German captain Carola Rackete, setting her free. She was being charged with aiding illegal immigration. Rackete, who captained the migrant rescue ship Sea-Watch 3 with over 40 migrants on board, was detained after refusing to comply with a ban on entering Italy's territorial waters.
Yes, it's very important for me to underline that it should not be about me as a person. It should be about the fact that we have thousands of refugees in a country which is at war, from where they should urgently be evacuated, and I expect, especially from the European Commission, that they quickly agree how these boat refugees will be distributed in Europe.
Thursday marks 10 years since the United Nations declared July 18th as Nelson Mandela International Day. On this day, people from around the world highlight Nelson Mandela's 67 years of selfless dedication to peace and goodwill. More in this report from our special contributor, Johan Abrams.
And after that, I think we will get you guys to interview each other.
We have democracy today because of him. Mandela was a hero and still a hero. Even though he died, we're still living in his legacy.
These grade 11 pupils form part of South Africa's Born Freeze, children born after the fall of apartheid.
This day is very special to all of us because it is the day where legend was born.
Leaders in government also pay tribute to Mandela and his legacy of solidarity with countries that supported them during the fight against the apartheid regime.
His heart was deeply ensconced in those feelings of solidarity and internationalism, that ours was a victory possible only with the support of people throughout the world. We must never forget that lesson, and we too must act in similar manner with others in other countries that are confronting the same problems.
Mr. Tsinoli also says it's important for children to embrace the Mandela legacy.
The work to continue to keep alive the values that Madiba represented as a leader of the African National Congress and as a leader of the country continues to inspire many, including children.
I think we as a youth, we are the future of this country, and we must do more to keep the Mandela legacy alive.
On this day, thousands of people and organizations around the world take part in various charity activities to celebrate Mandela Day. Johan Abrams for Telesur in Cape Town, South Africa.
We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thanks for watching.